Hello, welcome back to Proactive. Thank you for joining us. Let's go over to Perth now, where there's a major lithium conference on over there. So we'll have a chat to Jake Fraser, the battery materials consultant, and Olli Heathman, manager of mining research from Roskill. Hello, gentlemen. Lovely to see you both.
Pleasure to be here. Good morning.
Good morning or afternoon for us here, but that's all good. Now, you guys are normally based in London, but are in Perth this week for, as I just said, Roskill's Lithium Mine to Market 2020 conference, bringing together high-profile speakers from across the globe and across the lithium industry to give a unique insight into Australia's road to lithium dominance. So there were a variety of industry stakeholders represented and talking about the potential benefits that lithium and other battery mining and refining can bring to Australia. What have you fellas found to be the highlights? If we could start with Jake.
Yeah, certainly. I think we've had quite a variety of significant industry stakeholders with us here for the conference here in Perth. It's ranged from state and federal government levels to existing producers in the industry, and that's been quite important because we're starting to really get to a constructive discussion on where the industry's at and where we're moving forward. So I think some of the key points to take out of this from the stakeholders' perspective is the value that WA can potentially bring. We had quite constructive discussions of the Kwinana industrial zone where Tianqi Lithium has recently constructed their plant. And others are also looking to do so. So there's some significant synergies there to do with reagents that are used in the processing, which is just one of the few benefits that were brought up for the state potentially, as we think the value in future can certainly be provided from WA itself.
Yeah, and you are London-based, so you'd have a very good global perspective. Just how would you place WA and Australia in the lithium sector overall? Are they certainly in there as major players, or where would you rank them?
Yeah, I think from the mining perspective, the miners that produce the spodumene concentrate that gets converted to lithium compounds, carbonate or hydroxide, which are used in batteries, certainly they dominate the market with well over 90 to 95% at minimum of the global share in terms of mine output. So they're significantly placed. On the refining side, Tianqi's recent construction of their plant in Kwinana is the first of its kind in Australia. And we've also got Albemarle planning to do the same in Kemerton. So I think the state certainly is taking a long-term horizon view of what value it could bring in future. But at the end of the day, we're certainly just at the beginning of what's a major industry transition.
Yeah, interesting. Now, I understand one of Roskill's China-based analysts provided insight into the Chinese lithium market via a remote feed after she was unable to travel to the conference in person. And can I take a guess that that was tied into the coronavirus flight restrictions into Australia?
Unfortunately so, yes, that's correct.
Well, at least she could still present. What did she have to say in her presentation?
Yeah, so Roskill has a permanent office based in China, which gives us really detailed insight on what's happening on the ground. In the Chinese market at the moment, I think it's extremely interesting to learn and discuss about how there's been quite a lot of spodumene conversion plants that have been constructed and brought online in recent years. However, with the depressed market prices at the moment, some of them have become uneconomic, and have either cut back production or have delayed their construction plans. And that's quite significant as the existing major players that are there are still producing, but we are certainly seeing the impacts on the new entrants.
And any other particularly good speakers of note?
Yeah, I think we've had quite a big range and for me, I think one of the most interesting things was hearing from state and federal government bodies. David Thurchill from the Department of Industry, Innovation and Science spoke about some of the macro factors impacting extraction industries in Australia. So I think it's been quite a constructive couple of days here in Perth.
Did the governments, both state and federal, give any commitments specifically for the industry and the sector?
Yeah, I think most of the discussion was centred around the approvals process for either building the mines or also the refineries. We have segmented industrial zones that have been dedicated to promoting industry growth. And I think that's something that's encouraging to try and get the international investment that we're starting to see but also sustaining it for the long term, which is important for Australia.
And several new entrants to the Australian lithium mining sector also gave their take on how their first years in production have gone and what factors they're currently focusing on in a challenging market environment. In summary, how have they been finding it? And I might go to Olli for this one.
So we had representatives from both Pilbara Minerals and Altura Mining that over the past couple of years have started production from their projects within the Pilbara region. And I think, they faced a number of challenges during that period, not just weather-related, so cyclones and dealing with the issue of transporting material or exporting material to China via Port Hedland, but also just with understanding their plants, understanding their deposits, and really sort of ramping up these projects to capacity. So that was a big bit of their initial focus. And they talked through some of the challenges and how they overcame those things, and sort of particularly around sort of understanding the deposits and bringing sort of that sort of knowledge base through to use. And then more recently, obviously, the weakening lithium market conditions have had quite a significant impact on them, with a reduction in their price, and really how they're trying to sort of overcome that, and strategies in place to sort of safeguard themselves and maintain business. We've seen sort of Pilbara particularly announce recently that they've sort of curtailed production in an effort to sort of keep a strong cash position. So there were some really interesting factors that they were talking through, and changing ones as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just, especially with those early miners, the junior miners in particular, it's a matter of just hanging in there, isn't it? Because it takes a while, but it's like we're at the bottom of this, like about to like boom, not too distant future, like in a few years' time. And just getting on to the next question, a number of lithium project developers presented and delivered a relatively buoyant message to that effect. What did they have to say? Are they basically waiting for, because electric vehicles are about to like boom worldwide, so lithium's really going to be in high demand? What was the message they delivered that was so buoyant?
Yeah, so I think particularly from the developers' side, we had speakers speak with projects both in Australia and internationally, particularly from the hard rock sector within Africa. And really the message there was, okay, there's a near-term slowdown in supply. So what we're doing is sort of taking, not necessarily a step back, but taking time to properly evaluate our project, look how we can maximize what we have, do work to understand the deposits better, learn the lessons from the last wave of mines that came online in Australia, and really apply that to making their projects better. So when the market does pick up and lithium, more supplies are needed, which we certainly expect it will be from the middle of this decade, that they're in a really strong position to deliver that new supply.
Did you find out from some of the speakers or the talk at the industry any gauge of a turning point specifically where it's really going to start to boom, or is it just going to be more of a slow journey? Did any of the experts say, like, maybe in 18 months' time that's going to turn things around, or is that too specific?
I think from our view on the market is that there is some oversupply in stocks in China that need to be sort of burnt through over the next 12 months. But then from then we should start to see a market moving back to sort of neutrality, and then maybe or looking towards the middle of the decade, we'll see a market potentially moving into deficit, or could if there isn't significant supply brought online. And I think that's the period where we're looking at sort of, and with that in mind, it takes sort of several years to build a mine and bring it online. So I think these projects and developers are well placed to sort of take advantage of that when new supply is required.
Yeah, for sure. And finally, and I'll ask both of you this, what would you say were your key takeaways for this year's conference as far as you guys are concerned, particularly in relation to Australia's road to lithium dominance? To Olli first, what do you think?
Obviously, the sort of the key take home was that, yes, the market is currently depressed, it's struggling, but the long-term picture is certainly one that I think there is general consensus. We need lots more lithium. So I think there's a lot of people, positioning themselves to sort of fulfill that requirement in the future. And I think, everyone's very much looking on a longer-term view rather than sort of taking becoming too disheartened by what's happening in the short term.
And I'll get on to Jake in just a second, but just one final question to Olli. What about from the investors' perspective in lithium? What message would you give to them?
There are lots of projects that have the potential to come online. There's also existing producers that have capacity to build out. And I think we've seen, the market really in sort of, turmoil over recent or over the past 18 months. And actually, we do see a corner on the horizon. And I really think that the message for investors is that, long term, there is a good growth story in lithium and the whole lithium-ion battery story.
Yeah, nice one. And just to Jake, what would you say were your key takeaways from the conference?
Yeah, look, I think for me, it's pretty much some of my key takeaways would be revolving around the state and federal government and their comments that they've got in the space. They're certainly taking a proactive approach to trying to encourage industry, which is good for Australia, but also taking into account that there will be technical challenges along the way in such a growing market. Part of those challenges is also the upskilling of labour that may not be used to operating such complicated refineries, such as, for example. But that's certainly something I think we can overcome in future.
And what about your message for investors? Similar to Olli there, just hang in for the long haul because the rewards will be coming?
Yeah, I think the investment space at the moment is actually quite interesting, specifically within the last 3 to 4 months. We've seen companies such as Ganfeng Lithium, who's a significant refiner of carbonate and hydroxide products. Their company value has increased substantially since Q2 last year. And it's a similar story for miners. We've seen this month in specifically, and also in January, upticks of up to 18 to 20% in one day. That might be a short-term fluctuation, but I think in the long term there is value there. And for now, investors really should focus on the cost profiles of producers, the quality of their product, which will then enable them to continue to have cash flow and be sustainable for the long term.
Yeah, great advice, and really appreciate your time, both Jake Fraser and Olli Heathman there. Thank you so much for stopping by and talking to us, and hopefully you get to enjoy some of Perth and WA where you're at there at the conference, but hope also to get to talk to you again sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, terrific. Great to have you. That's Jake Fraser and Olli Heathman from Roskill.